Hey, so I know it's been a minute, but now I'm back. I was experiencing some Warframe burnout, and that led me to try some other games that I will probably talk more about on this channel. One of these games is Atlyss. Also, excuse my voice, I've been a little sick, so I sound a little different, but please bear with me. So, Atlyss is great. I love this game. Do note that the game is currently in early access, so there's more stuff to come and some might change with later updates. Now let's talk about the game. So this game was initially introduced to me through YouTube recommendations. I don't remember who made the video, but whoever you are, shout out to you for putting me on this absolute gem of a game. Then I messaged my friend about it, asking him if he wanted to play together, and then he bought it for both of us. Shout out to him for that as well. At first glance, Atlyss looks like a very nude bait game, but I assure you it's more than that. So I'm not a fairy and I've never been one, however I do like games where you can be more than just a human. I find them more interesting and fun. So this game was right up my rally from just the character creator. Speaking of the character creator, it has a lot of interesting sliders to say the least. Now, the character creator is pretty good and vast, I'd say, at least for a game in early access made by one dude. The character creator allows you to change pretty much everything on your character, and do not worry, the character you see is just to show off stuff. That abomination is not one of my playable characters. Now, as you can see, there was a height, width, chest, arms, belly, bottom, and tail modifier. Now don't get me wrong, I said this game is more than just fairy nudity bait, but it is 100% trying to appeal to a certain audience with its character creator. Anyway, as you saw, everything is customizable on your character, from its color, to its hair, to its body, which was impressive to see in the early access of a single developer game, and I have to say he did a good job with it. It's good enough to make a unique character while also giving you room to experiment with how you want them to look. I mean, here, take a look at some of my characters. Now, as you may have noticed, some of these characters look like completely different creatures from each other. And that's because they are. In this game, there are 5 races you can play as, at least for the time being. These races are the Imp, the Poon, the Kobold, the Birdle, and the Chang. Each one of these races comes with a racial ability, and they all differ from each other. The Imp has a mind ability, where it throws out a projectile that damages the enemy, while healing the Imp for the damage dealt. The Poon grants itself movement speed and evasion. The Kobold allows for the next spellcast to be free, no matter if it costs mana, stamina, health, and all that. Birdle provides a guaranteed critical with your next attack, and Chang becomes immune to all damage for 6 seconds. There are also classes in this game. There are only 3 as of now, so these are Fighter, Mystic, and Bandit. Each class comes with its own weapons. For example, Fighter comes with sword, hammer, and spear. Bandit with katars and bow. And Mystic with scepter and bell. Now, here is the beauty of this game. So, as you can tell from what I've said so far, you can see that there is a clear path to which race works best with which class. For example, the Chang race would be a perfect fighter due to its racial ability, since it can be immune. However, you can get each race's racial ability in the game as a drop and put them on other races, so you could have a Mystic Poon with Chang's racial ability. And something else you can do is you can choose what weapon you want. What I mean by that is that there are some stones that can change the scalability of the weapon. Each weapon scales with a certain stat. So for sword, it will be strength, for bow dex, and for scepter mind. However, using those stones allows you to have any weapon on any class, so you can have a Mystic with a sword, for example, or a Bandit with a scepter, allowing you to play with whatever playstyle you want and whichever weapon you are more comfortable with. So something I forgot to mention while making this is that Each class has its own unique abilities, letting you mix and match them how you want. So there's not much to say here. I'd say it's pretty reasonable, and it's just like any RPG where you get to choose skills. Keep in mind, I do want to make a separate video on each class, and I'll probably start working on it soon. Now let's talk about the actual gameplay. The gameplay of this game is simply amazing. I love how smooth the movement and combat is. It doesn't feel clunky at all or anything like that. I mean, look at the game as I'm playing it. It simply feels amazing. But in terms of what you do in the game, it is pretty simple. You go inside these dungeons, defeat enemies, get the checkpoints so you can come back faster, defeat enemies, level up, get loot, and then get ready for the eventual boss. That basically summarizes it. There's a little more to it, like having to find certain levers to open certain gates in order to move on, and sometimes they can be somewhat hidden, so you have to do a little bit of platforming. Oh, and platforming. There it is, dude. I was so worried about the platforming. Listen, I hate platforming because I suck at it, and I don't have the patience for it either. But this game has simple enough platforming where it's fun and not annoying. The platforming in this game is so you can feel just a bit more challenged by the environment, while also making the process of getting somewhere slightly longer. As someone who is really bad at platforming, this game's platforming I like, and I'd say it's decently fun. It doesn't need to be anything crazy since it is not a main gameplay feature. The game focuses more around the combat, which, speaking of, I should have mentioned this earlier, but you can parry in this game. It is relatively easy to parry, especially if you're playing as the fighter class, which this scales with stamina, which reminds me of the next segment. Stats! Yes, we're talking about stats. So stats in this game are pretty simple to understand. You put points in whichever stat your class is. So as you can see, I have a fighter class here, so I put points on strength and vitality. All classes should put around 16 to 20 points in vitality, since health is needed to be able to tank some attacks. Now, those colored orbs, we don't know what they are yet. I've seen people on the Reddit of the game say that they are supposed to be elemental weaknesses or strengths. I don't know how confirmed this is, but yeah, this is really when it comes to stat scaling for now. I'm sure there will be more stuff for it soon. Next, let's talk about equipment. Equipment in this game is also simple. You got your headpiece, chest piece, leggings, cape, and ring. And then you got your weapons. You can have up to 2 weapons to switch from, plus a shield. Personally, I don't do that. I prefer having individual characters for each weapon. But I know some people run bow with katars secondary since they both scale with dex, so it is a good option if you want to melee at some points. I already explained what there is to weapons, so let me talk a bit more about the armor. Each armor piece gives you stats, a lot of different ones. These stats come with the armor. However, you can go and talk to this lady to reroll them. So even if you got an armor piece you want, but it has stats for another class, you can reroll them. This also applies to weapons, by the way. As you can see, the game's overall systems are pretty simple. That is partly due to it being early access, but it is deeper than that. What I mean is that there is a level of complexity that you can add to the game, and that's by how you want your character to be. Some people won't want to play some cookie cutter build. They might want to play a crit mystic, so they will spread their stats accordingly to that class's needs. Same thing with their abilities. Something I forgot to mention is that you can't have 2 classes on one character, at least for the time being. Maybe later on when the level cap goes beyond level 25. So I mentioned bosses briefly before. There are currently 2 bosses. One dude who looks like Hunter from Pokemon, and a golem guy. As you can see, these bosses seem simple, at least in design, but in gameplay wise, in reality, they can be very annoying and hit very hard. To be fair, the boss I'm doing right now is of a lower level, and I'm doing it with a character that I finished the game with. But it would have taken a minute to get to it if I did the higher level one, so I decided to do this one. To be honest, I don't want to spoil these fights too much, so yeah, let's just move on. Oh, and by the way, more bosses will be added obviously later on. This segment is short, but I do want to make separate videos on the bosses, so yeah, I'm just gonna leave it as it is. Before we move on to the final segment, let's talk a bit about the multiplayer. So as I said at the beginning of the video, my friend bought us the game to play together, and thankfully the servers were perfect. I don't know how it works, but I hosted a lobby, I had 0 ping and my friend had 200. I live in Europe, he lives in the US, but the game ran smoothly for both me and him. And for those wondering, no one was teleporting around on each other's screens, you know, when usually games have lag, or if you play with high ping, the other person might see you teleporting around. Everything was perfect. You can create private lobbies like that, or you can join one from the open ones. Some of these are 18 plus, since some people do some form of roleplay apparently, but there are mostly ones where people just want to play together and help each other get stuff. The gameplay of multiplayer is the same as single player, but with a friend or more. Honestly, I don't know what the limit of players is, but yeah, that's really about it for multiplayer for now. Finally, the story. I left this for last since it's nothing too important and the game seems to not put as much emphasis on it, but here is a summary of the story. Starting off, we are a lost soul in purgatory that Angela brought back to life. When we ask Angela why me, she does not give us a straight answer, only saying that being alive is preferable to being dead and stuck in purgatory. We also know that Angela is driven to restore the world with the mystic stitches that once held it together. This is the only info I could find on the story, which was by a Redditor that actually also made some nice assumptions about other stuff that might relate to some story elements. I'll leave a link to it in the description for anyone who wants to read the full thing. But yeah, this is all I wanted to talk about for now. I will be making more videos on this game as more updates release. And as of Warframe content, soon I'll play and make a video on 1999 hopefully. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of the game. Are you going to try it? Leave your thoughts down in the comments and take care.